All right, welcome back, everybody. Daily trading recap for the 29th of September here, 2021. It is Wednesday, my dudes. Man, we got a lot to go over today. SPY really kind of nothingness day today. Here's the daily, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, whatever. Dollar volume around the horn. NASDAQ, $159 billion volume. NYSE, $219 billion. OTC's $1.8 billion volume on the day, too. What an exciting day. Like I said, I think I got a lot to go over here for tickers, just even in the introduction here that I wanted to go over beforehand. 3 trades for me on 3 different tickers, 2 real trades, in really 1 trade for what I did on USWS, but then just kind of little feelers on CEI that we'll get to heavily, and then CRVS too, which was an interesting one as well. Let's go over coming into the watch list for today, watching CRVS, watching RCAT that really just died off and failed. Looking for that third day surge type of play action, looking for volume to come in, set this thing up. Nothing happened as a result from that. ENZC, OTC ticker looking for a second day continuation. Had this little bit of consolidation. We have a gap up after that day yesterday. Looking on the daily gives us a little better perspective here. It wasn't like the most insane, awesome dollar volume day push, parabolic move to the upside for a first green day, but it was still moving pretty nicely. So we're looking for any continuation if it wanted to continue like a multi-day run up. Had a nice little gap up, and this kind of, after this little big drop-off happened, that could be a band. After this little consolidation, kind of reminded me of similar potentially to that CYDY, of course, that famous Gratani short of when you get to that top, especially on these OTC tickers. Of course, this is really the first time I think I've identified this. I don't have any hard data on it, but it seems kind of familiar that when it gets to these extended levels or just nice green percentage points on a day, and it just continues to hold that, doesn't really look like it's weak, doesn't really look like it's strong either, then that should be the indication to potentially get short for the big potential fall off immediately soon after that. And that's what happened on this one. Still didn't even really go hard red. It wasn't even that crazy of a percentage move to the downside. I started, as it was producing this third red candle here for the panic, that was when I was really getting ready, getting everything together and ready to potentially buy a dip buy if it wanted to come down further. But again, too, it wasn't the biggest percentage move yesterday for a first green day, like there were any longs to really panic this thing hard all the way down. It was a pretty decent, the bottom was really at 18 cents here. I was watching it the whole way and could say, yeah, you could see the bottom there. And if you played it well enough, you got to 19 to really decent 10% block there to the upside, but then failed again too, and just kind of nothingness the whole rest of the day. That was ENZC. CEI we'll get into later. GOVX, this is another strategy type of chart that I want to start playing more. I've seen these play out time and time again, and I tell myself what they're going to do the next day, and they do exactly that. And this one was another example of that too. As we get the spike from yesterday on whatever crappy news this stock had, just look it up quick, just for reference, that it was purchased something, whatever, or after the close yesterday was the 28th. Immunology pipeline, they acquired clinical stage cancer program, yada yada. Float on this one, $6 million. Get a nice spike in the after hours there, does whatever, and then has this consolidation going into the close of after hours. Pre-market just yada yada does whatever. And really for me, any time in pre-market and shorts is a nice opportunity to get and establish a short position. If you're waiting till that market hours point, because this thing is so weak, and maybe too because of the fact that there were other tickers out there, there were other prettier pigs in the ball to be traded by day traders, that this one didn't have so much attention drawn to it that it didn't squeeze higher for any kind of dip and rip or any volatile craziness during market hours. But I feel like I've seen this trend play out over and over again when that news release comes immediately at the close from the previous trading day, and it just kind of does nothing, holds decently well, and then pre-market the next day opens up the same style of thing. It just becomes this long fade during market hours, just a slow, nice and easy percentage move, a very probable trade to the downside. That's just a bleeding type of chart. And even looking at trying to get short into this little parabolic failure move here is another great opportunity to get short to establish shares if you're waiting during market hours for a trade confirmation on that one. So that's a trade I think I want to start taking more, actually start taking trades on, going short these patterns of kind of first green day shorts, I like to call those. Big movers on the day for scanners going into the pre-market, AUVI. This one, both of these, NCNA was another dip and rip candidate too. This is movers that get the press release coming out this pre-market, you get that spike to the upside, kind of finds itself, consolidation. But when they find follow more extremes during the pre-market. So for instance, on this AVI, when it tends to look weaker, or SNOA, I'll just pull that one up in reference a little bit, when they start to establish a little bit more of a downtrend, they don't hold like perfectly to a range or just stay very symmetrical and tight bound in what they want to do. I feel like that puts a weightier perspective on it just doing it, kind of destroying any potential dip and rip pattern or both sides of the equation on the trade. So really nobody wins in a sense. So nobody loses hard, nobody wins big, but then there's really nobody in between. It's just kind of, and especially that played out today on AVI2. As it broke down hard in this pre-market, it was definitely off my watches for a dip and rip. And then going into NCNA, as you get this just kind of weird W building of the spike coming in off of that press release, then it breaks hard under VWAP here, and then you get the reclaim kind of close to those pre-market highs. Yes, you can call this a dip and rip here within these first 2 minutes. That you get the dip out of the open. If you're buying it immediately, that's a nice little 10% block there, or half 5%, playing it from like this 2.9-ish. If you're playing it kind of perfectly, just under 10% from right away here. You get a little higher low-ish area here, but really tough to call on that one. And especially what it did the rest of that morning session, just chopping away, fake breakout and under VWAP, and then just fading the rest of the day on that one. So just tough. Glad I stayed away from those big percentage movers. What would normally entice me, and those would be really my only focus, like the AUVIs and the NCNAs, because they were just the only thing I was on my scanners. I think I'm stepping away from that role a little bit more, trading more on substance, trading more on setups that require a little bit more pre-planning beforehand going into it, which I like to do, especially for my mental aspect of it, because I think I need a lot more substance and confirmation of the trade, maybe going into the trade versus just seeing green, chasing, going after it, and that's when I take my losses. And then I'm going to tie into that as well to what I want to do I think I was showing it on CRVS and USWS, that I'm good. I have to totally get away from these starter feeler trades or the little chaser trades that I call the protection, because I think it could go higher from there, but I'm telling myself that it's a small size. Looking at my data, looking back on it, there's like 1 out of freaking 100 that are winners, and not even a big winner at it. They're all losers. I tell myself that it's that protection of, even though I may take it for a loss, it's intriguing me more in the level 2 and the time and sales and causing me to read into it further. So potentially, even though I may take it for a small loss, it's setting me up for a better, more substantial base trade within the next few minutes, hours, whatever that may be. But I feel like it's doing worse for me, because then it's now putting me in the loss situation of, now I took that one for a loss. Doesn't matter what the size of the loss was. I know it was a small loss because the smarter version of me is forcing myself to not take a big position size in those crazy random starters, just chasing a big green spike right out of the morning. But that just from the get-go too is bad habits that I'm building of, I do not want to be chasing immediately from the get-go. We're not in the type of market where you can do that and be successful in that anymore too, and I have not realized that as of yet. But I think building the establishment here from now of, I've got to be way more patient. I'm going to do my absolute best to not even toy around with little tiny small position size, saying, I just want to scale into this trade, or I want to size it. I'm not at that point in my trading career as of yet, and I've got to still be looking for optimal entry points for a real position size for the real charts that I want to be trading, because that's where I need to be as of right now, and it's in my trading career. And the little tiny hits and little tiny paper cuts, they are minimal, they are small, but I can't keep doing that to myself. I think it's wrecking me more and more every single day. Putting on those real trades is what I need to be doing in the future. That was NCNA. I want to go into Naked now as a reference. This was on my watch still as kind of on the back burner as an educational case. In reviewing it yesterday too, after the close, it's a volume certainly similar to this in January or June 4th-ish type of move here on the daily, if you're looking at that aspect. And it's kind of the same repetition of what it did during that exact time frame too. You get this nice little green day, a little bit of a top wiki and bottom wiki red candle, and then you get a trend down red day following that. And it pretty much repeated the exact same thing. The intraday may have looked a little different. I didn't look specifically into that, what it did on that same time frame, but it's kind of what it did today. Out of the open, you were pretty safe the whole time of risking, especially you can identify a little wedge here at this point that it traded even further down from there. A pretty nice percentage move to collect from that. Looking like a little squeeze in the after hours here, but I just wanted to mention that one too of noticing that type of pattern repeating, that history doesn't necessarily always specifically or perfectly repeat itself, but it does rhyme, and that may be a nice little factor that I noticed on that one. NAKD. JAN, I noticed from yesterday as well too, and even before the close, I was looking at it from the scanner for how it was popping up and how it likes to develop a few of these little bigger volume days before potentially insanely climactic day. Specifically in reference, you can call it this, of course, trying to look back in a super hot, crazy sector, a crazy market of early 2021, late 2020. Even though that was super crazy, it's still the characteristics of what the stocks like to do. They can do similar-ish things, maybe not the same percentage moves, but similar volatility that they may like to follow. So even on days like this, when it's building little green days on volume, then you get nice gap ups to the upside, or whenever they release a press release. And God, I forget the specific. There's just literally so much that I had here written on my journal, but the same thing too that they tried to release. This one doesn't really have much weight for what I want to say it to, but I just thought it was funny to notice that they did release a press release right after the close of this day, where it was kind of building a little bit of volume, and there was a little bit of stepping up on the bid and supporting around VWAP, and then the press release come out, immediately shoots up the price, and then just tanks it whatsoever. So immediately right after that. So funny to see that, maybe it was a failure on their part that they didn't get the continuation they wanted to see in holding, similar to like a GOVX, where you get that nice hold potentially around that $9 mark, and then they can just fade it off the rest of the next pre-market and market hours. But this one just failed immediately after that, and then had nothing into today too. So interesting to see on that one how these different types of charts work out. If they, looking at this on an insider edition, if this was a failure that how they looked at it, or if they were able to get out within that quick little time frame, or what could have gone differently if different tickers weren't moving, if there wasn't CEI, if this was a different market environment, maybe we're back in a hotter market, if different things happen, whatever. A lot of time spent on that one that I don't really want to spend. But anyway, regardless. Also want to talk about HEPA and ZKIN. These are kind of morning dumpers that spiked on news. A little bit of a lower floater, I think. I'm not going to look in specifically, but I think they were just hitting my pre-market scanner right around the time that I do want to be shorting these things. There's just 1 minute pop and dumpers. Collect your nice little 10% profit opportunity even before market open. Pretty awesome to see that they are at least happening over and over again. ZKIN, the same thing, just that 1 minute popper, get an entry point as it's cracking, failing at VWAP, and you are all good and set to collect that 10% riding this thing, even if you're getting a $3 average, riding this thing down to 2.7 before market open as a 10% move. Pretty awesome to see. Also wanted to mention, I wrote in my journal of with how the market is just continually so choppy and growing continually more volatile, it's still idiotic for me to think that I can continue to keep sizing up in position size when I haven't found a hard set trade pattern, when I know that I'm going to have a wider risk tolerance in pretty much everything. And I know I'm going to have to allow that risk window on this individual chart itself to be wider. So keeping that in mind for the future of redefining what I think of a full position size as of right now, of a pattern that I haven't, traded hard or slam dunked within the past few weeks, that I don't feel extremely confident in going a full account size in for a single trade, but a OTC dip buy style trade, or maybe a VWAP hold style of trade that has not played out for a long time, an afternoon VWAP hold trade that we've not seen in a long time, but potentially saying, man, this one is holding extremely well. I think the probability could be greater than 50% on this one for today for how it's holding, the volume it's putting in. Gosh, I feel really confident, at least in taking a small slice in this one. So establishing a position in that to say, I know potentially that I'm going to have a greater risk window, because we've seen so many of them just fake out, so many people. And then the fake out ends up being the actual dump, like an hour, 2 hours later on, because it's just continued to chop away so many people that everybody that wanted to play a part of the game just got eaten away, and nobody wins except the insiders, right? But just understanding that fact that too, when they do eventually start to happen, that understanding the risk window always really has to be growing. Like, kind of, I relate it back to baseball as always, the strike zone is continually evolving. The strike zone's continually getting lower, and the strike zone's continually evolving to how the batters are interpreting it and what the umpires interpret it to be too. So it's never a static game of, oh, you risk high day, you risk low day for whatever setup it may be. But that's just a mental note I have to keep in myself too for going forward for any style of new pattern that I want to trade. Man, that was a lot. Let's get into the business. Going over trades. USWS, I had this one on watch coming into today because of its former runnerness, its low floatiness. I believe it's low floaterness, or maybe a 62 million floater. Yeah, it's not a super low floater. Former runner, of course, though. Had a nice little perk here around this June-ish summer area. Now just in this little crowish downtrend, but building with volume from the past few days. We'll eliminate this. Let's do this from this perspective. So coming in from yesterday, here's where we're looking in this little cupish pattern that you had this nice volume day on the 22nd, dojis, rests, whatever, but it's building off of this 70 level. Now you get big volume in coming to push it above 80, coming right under that breakout point from that 22nd day. Also have this technical level of also a bottom here on this level, little level of support for the 18th of June, that must be, that we get a nice breakout to the upside from that in the pre-market or even after hours that it held above that. And it was a little bit of a short squeeze right away from the open of this pre-market and then dump, but still holding that. So I thought there was a little bit more juice left potentially in it if the volume was there. And here's where that little starter position came in on this trade of within the first few minutes, we were getting a nice little perk. And I'm thinking, oh, shoot, this thing could just go. This could be one of those that you see on the scanner pop up that you didn't see beforehand, but then just has this crazy random immediate spike out of the open for some reason. So I was playing off of, man, the bid is strong here. I think more volume could come in as it gets more crazy, we potentially pass this $1 level. That became a huge psychological level the rest of the morning session, and especially these pre-market levels as well too. Just looking for a little quick chase trade here, scalping trade at that point, but sold it as it pulled back pretty hard right around that $94 or 94-cent entry. I think 100 shares I had, or 500 shares. 500 shares I took on all three of these different trades in and out on this one today. So just stopped out pretty much for break even. But then eventually ended up trying to pull back around that 98 mark and then pull back again. Broke again back to the upside, got closer to that dollar mark. I was looking to buy it on strength. We got this huge volume candle coming in to push here, which was the biggest volume candle on the day, right to that $1 mark, and then failed. And like the degenerate I am, I still held through that, and it looked pretty strong. Tried again to break that $1 mark. Didn't have the volume to really push it up, but still like the degenerate I am, held through that. We got another bit of a lower low after this pullback. That could have kind of stopped me out, but still waiting to see. There was plenty more time in the morning session for this thing to push. We did get another push, huge volume, the second biggest volume candle after that first attempt from that $1 level gets us nice to that $1.02 mark, and then just gets slapped, pulled back down right underneath $1 again. And it wasn't breaking hard. It wasn't like it was slapping back down immediately after that. So it was just kind of got me curious. And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. I know I should be ready to stop myself out now to get out because it just had a huge rejection at that $1 mark, but it just wasn't breaking. I was kind of curious, just like, oh, that's happening. And then we get to this next minute candle, and then it starts to just like break off. And I'm like, okay, I got you. I'll get out. So I got pretty much bottom ticked at like 94 something for that exit. So that was kind of rough for that one. How I didn't think it was actually still, and then it turned out, oh yeah, it's just a little delayed in my mindset. So I had to get stopped out on that one, but then did reclaim. Got slow little grind back up once again. Finally, another push that, gosh, for how many times this thing has been tested $1, I have to be in this thing again. And I did get another top tick fill at like $1.99 or something. I think I got right underneath whatever the high of this candle was. $1 it did fill, and I got 1099. So didn't get exactly top ticked, but I got top tick and had to be the degenerate, wait for that pullback again. VWAP's still building pretty well on the day as well. And it's just holding here. We get that same kind of low being put in. We're coming back up to that dollar test again. It's just continuing to hover around that dollar mark. That was the battle point today too, that emotional, psychological level. Then we finally get the nice perk to the upside. It was literally within seconds. I looked away for literal seconds, and then we get this nice candle with the volume to push it above that dollar mark, the $1.00 mark. And I knew at that point too, if this doesn't hold that dollar point, if we come back underneath, then I'm definitely going to be done with it, because for how many times it's tried and failed, it's either going to happen or it's not going to happen. Prices got to start moving away quickly at some point for whatever level was developed there. I mean, even on this entry too, for that last entry, it was just like that dollar mark ask was so freaking stacked. I knew if we broke it, I definitely wanted to be the upside. And then it was just like more people came in to sell this thing after my entry, after we did finally break to the upside of it. I was like, oh, okay. Learning lessons through it all. And then exited night. I wrote in this little thing here. I exited throughout this entire peak. There was 9 different exits, 2 at 100 shares for exits. Let's bring this here. And then let's do that. Okay. Yeah. So best exit was 115 at my last 25 shares that I had. Started exiting out right around this like 105 mark as it was petering. And then we got a little bit more strength. Sold some more as it's petering again. So really didn't know what could come of this thing. If there was more overhead because of the daily as well too, for how many bag holders has been in this thing. I knew it needed a lot of volume in order to push that, but we didn't have the volume as of yet for where it was at this point. So then we get this nice averaged exit of around like $1.07. So it really wasn't the most optimal percentage move as a trade, but the opportunity certainly was there if I was degenerate enough to hold all the way to 115 point or anywhere around there. Then we did pull back, perfectly bounce off VWAP, get another new high day attempt to 1.2 we hit, and then just kind of hard sell off here into the close. So maybe done as of right now for this chart. Huge volume day on the daily as well too. But great percentage move on that one. Great percentage move opportunity on that one. Traded it pretty well. In hindsight, I may, wanting to be perfect, may have, shoulda, coulda, woulda held a little bit more, maybe not taken so many exits. I think I did. It felt a little bit better to me too that I was just scaling out super small, that I put in a lot of, scaling out of 50 shares, scaling out 50 shares here. As okay, we're bid's still holding. Scale another 50 shares at the next price point. Scale out at 110. Okay, now we're hitting that well. Scale out, fit another 50 shares at 111, right? So just those little tiny, paying myself along the way, taking money as it's there, not trying to turn this into a home run or anything that isn't there. Just awesome opportunity on USWS. I've had some familiarity with this ticker in the past too, so tried to take away that bias of it or trying to force this thing any higher, but it was just an awesome battle. I think this was definitely a chart to reflect on going forward for the psychological, emotional battle that those whole dollar level areas can have on specific tickers going forward. That was awesome. I mentioned 945, 54. Yeah, I mentioned that. Okay, let's get on to CRVS now before we hit CEI. Still just looking at this one for the just basing. I mentioned this one yesterday. It's kind of holding this like 650, 660 range. It looks a little better on the 30-minute chart here. You can see that had a little bit of inflection when in the previous run-up, and then now it's still supporting that point here going into today. But now we completely broke through that one. Initially tried to trade it as it was looking strong, getting a little bit of volume coming in at that $7 point. I knew if it was going to hold a well over that $7 point, I definitely wanted to be in this because I think it could. That $7 point had a lot of weight. Not hard technically, but I think it could have had some impact on how this thing traded and started another squeeze too that we didn't really see on that Monday that I also traded it on, looking for the same type of thing that, man, I just thought it had more legs in it for how low float this thing was, for how much attention it attracted with the pumpiness that was the initial run up without really huge volume to push this thing to the upside. I could have thought it was an easy short for any short looking to play these red days here, still holding strong into this day. But obviously a lot of other longs were thinking that same thesis as well too, and they got absolutely crushed in this sell-off here that I was not in front of the screen for. I didn't have this on my chart when this happened, but I initially tried to play it first 100 shares, buying pretty much again top ticked here as I thought bid was supporting, but it really wasn't, just ended up falling off right after that, but held VWAP. After that I sold kind of arbitrarily as it was looking weak. I got a great exit. I was pretty proud of myself as I saw, looking at that level 2, trying to just see if there was any splits in the bidders of how far those splits would be, how far this thing could drop off if the bid started to be slapped. And I knew that this thing could pick up pretty rapidly because it lacks support at times. Looking at yesterday too, it just has these hard red candles that can happen out of nowhere that can just get you off your feet by surprise. So pretty proud of myself for this exit. I could have very well have gotten filled way lower around VWAP if I wasn't so on top of watching that level 2 and bid and ask. And I just got out right before that bid just slipped away. So good exit on that one, really small. Not too small position size, but good exit on that one. And then this second trade, little 10 share, called it a little starter feeler swing. I did it in my day trade account because I was really thinking that this one could be an overnighter and I didn't want to waste cash on it, even though it was $60 for a cash account. But did it in my day trade account thinking that I definitely was going to hold this overnight, thinking that it was just going to kind of continue to do this choppiness into the close here, do whatever. Maybe it has another day where it just does blah, blah, whatever, but still holds that same range that I talked about earlier. But then, geez, and then putting a stop in at 6.5. I knew for sure I was not going to be holding this thing past 6.5. I knew 6.6 on the day was definitely a risky area to hold it. You can see even from yesterday too, 6.6 was kind of that bottom. So maybe should have, could have, would have put it there. But I said 6.5 is definitely my point of, even if it wants to come down below 6.6 and then play games back up to 6.8, I can still be in this trade. But then, geez, randomly I look back, I turned away for a few seconds. I had to stop at 6.5 through my day trading account, my trade zero that would have been. And then I pull it back up again and it's down to 6.2 with huge volume on the day. I'm like, oh, wow, that's crazy, right? And then I go to pull up my account to see that I'm actually out of the stock, right? That my stop worked. And of course, wouldn't you know it, I'm still in it, right? It's great. It's wonderful. But I think this is like the second time that's happened where, reflecting on it, I think it was user error that it only gave it like 4 or 5 cents from my stop of 6.5 that I said it was going to put in a limit order at 6.45, I think was my exit, which even then like should have been filled. I still don't understand how I did not get filled, even with 5 cents. I thought 5 cents was going to be way too much of room for it to fill me as it was touching that 6.5 mark. But oh my gosh, so finally caught up to it as it was at 6.2 mark and just fixed the mistake as it was there. But that's why I took a really small size on this one. That's why I do the stops with small size. If I know I'm going to swing it, if I know I'm not going to be looking actively at it, because things like this can happen. So it turned this, what would have been a crazy hard P&L percentage loss into, an $8 loss, because even though it was a crazy percentage move to the downside that I wasn't willing to take, still protected myself a little bit because it was a small position size in that one. That was CRVS. Let us get into CEI. Judas Priest. Man, this is one for the history books, without a doubt. So many people, and I said the same thing yesterday too. We get this huge blow off volume candle day. Let's just take away today. Let's actually do this, set this up a little bit better. Yeah, let's do that. And then let's do, there we go. So we get this huge volume day on the daily, huge blow off day. Everybody and their grandma, including me, the stupid me, thinking, oh, this could be a great short opportunity. It's super overextended, had 4 green days in a row, huge volume. It's going to be a nice blow off day tomorrow. The intraday set a little bit differently because it did actually have a little bit of blow off in the morning session and then just kind of like reclaimed. And shorts trying to hold this overnight were pretty sketched out. They weren't sitting comfortably. I know that for sure. Then we get into today. We get this choppy open right out of the gate here after a little bit of a pullback from that after hours. And then it's just kind of chops around. Let's break this down, like going tick by tick of seeing, okay, I identified a perfect, you get this little higher low here after this kind of double bottomish area. And then you get the reclaim back to above VWAP. And then you get the shorts who potentially were looking at this one from the morning session, looking for the dump immediately off of there. They get squeezed on new high a day. Those are the smart ones who are risking that high a day. They cut there. But then you get shorts who are trying to sell into this big volume perk, and you get a little bit of consolidation. They get squeezed to the upside once again. Then you get more shorts piling on top of this one. They get choppiness around. You can risk this little high day 3-4ish area that start to pull back a little bit to VWAP. You're thinking, okay, it's bought back a little bit up at VWAP and then put in a higher low here. It could be looking strong. It could be looking nice here. We're looking for the break of, as a short, we're looking for the break of VWAP now. This thing's got to start coming down or it's going to be pretty tough. And then 2, we actually traded this one pretty nice, looking for a wedge pattern here of line there. And then you get another line here for that little wedge that broke to the upside, squeeze the shorts there. Another reason to get out if you're short in any of that time frame. Then you get these little weird rejections. Big volume candle just slapped this down as it tried to attempt a new high day. From there, it just continued to produce 10% move, holding here, now playing around, flirting with $4 level that we have in store. Flirting around there, you get another coming around flirtation, you get slapped down, random volume slaps that try to trick everybody in and out on this one. But you look at that, close to another 10% block opportunity from there, and just continue to go 4.4, coming up to 4.8. Absolutely ludicrous to the upside on this one. Then we get the slap down. I think Roy, whatever his name is in the chat, in total on the day, 120K that he made on this ticker, just ludicrous. I made like 59 cents, I think, that I'll get into on these ones. But the total dollar volume on the day on this one, $3.4 billion volume on the day, 1.2 million trades. Absolutely ludicrous. The level 2 on this one has moved, on my scan software specifically, was going faster than I've ever seen this thing print. It was literally like it was blurred, like blurred lines just going flying through my screen. I've never seen anything like that. I don't think I've had any great reference points on that one, but that was the first time I've seen it. It was literally blurred for how fast it was moving. I was surprised my screen could print it that fast, or my stupid laptop could print it that fast. Then we get this final sell-off, get halt to the downside. These were 10-minute halts all the way to, you get more choppiness coming out of the halts, then you get another halt to the downside that breaks there. Huge $80 million volume candle within this 1 minute. That was the biggest one on the day at that point. And as it was, this is when I was finally kind of tuning in, watching it, and I knew, man, I gotta at least play something on this one. This is way too good. This is way too perfect of an entry point to look at as a dip buy, especially coming from the AMC GME type of days when watching the big guys trade these similar to the OTC tickers, right? So you get this huge volume candle coming in. I played 10 shares on it at least, just for educational sake, too, looking for a dip buy opportunity. Then we get a halt to the upside as it's coming back to VWAP. Opens pretty nicely, but then starts kind of testing that VWAP once again. Doesn't really have the strength to continue on, and I just sold it pretty much for break even or a little bit above as it was looking weak, and broke a little bit more, but then it'll kind of fake out, and then the slap comes in. That it goes into another halt to the downside. We break to another regional low a day here. Still green on the day at this point too. I know I call this a dip buy, but even though that's 30, call this from like 4.8 to 3.2, like 30% drop off. That was still green, still green on the day for what it was doing. Pretty insane. So just really educational, fun for me to watch on this one today. And then you get this fall off, new low a day here, as I was talking about. Then you get this another big volume candle pushed in on this one. Thought that was going to be another dip opportunity. We were going to see kind of a perk back to VWAP at this one. Again, took another 10 shares just as an educational dip buy opportunity for me to learn from. And it was looking pretty weak. To just kind of cut it as it was there. I was watching this dip. I saw a lot better than I saw the first initial dip too. And I could have got in with a better fill closer to that $3 mark. And I think I would have been, if it was an actual position or trade, I would have been way more comfortable holding this through this consolidation range with more confidence that it would have held that. Even though I would have been potentially scared out as it was breaking that new low day here, thinking that it could continue to speed up to the downside, and I probably would have gotten stopped out if even if I did have a $3 closer to that $3 position average looking for a dip buy. This little consolidation would have given me more confidence in potentially reclaiming VWAP for how far it's come on the day too, and especially now that this area is also right around that green open area, right around this range of 3 to 3.2 of that has a little bit of point of inflection too for any of the shorts, the bag holder shorts that were still holding this thing from the morning. They can now get out at break even, covering pretty much at that point the saving grace of holding this thing all day and the amount of pain they were suffering going into the afternoon session. They were now free from those chains. That had a little bit of inflection on this one, coming into a little bit of a reclaim into the close, and then just not too volatile, not too crazy as of right now. But geez, what a freaking chart on that one. Man, I'm trying to look and see if anything else that I mentioned here. Just what a smile this one put on my face too, for how long it's been since we've seen one of these, maybe relating it to an AMC or a GME, like I said earlier. But just ludicrous. The dollar volume, the trades going off on this one. I was excited to pull up the chat room after this one to see who and where and when everybody was getting in and out, the type of thesis is going into this one, how stupid everybody was talking in the morning session to how this chart would actually end up at the end of the day. I knew it would be pretty exciting coming into today, but I didn't know it was going to be this exciting. That was pretty awesome spectacle to see, and certainly entices me more to reflect on these in the future to say. And Tim Lento had a great, I think it was Tim Lento had a great point too. When we get these second parabolic days with the huge volume continuing again, you're gonna have to have the hard panics at some point. You got to be ready in store to the short side of when that super weak sign starts to come in. You get filled as many shares as you possibly can. I don't think there was, man, I doubt that they had any opportunities left to get filled, get borrows here at this point to get to the play to the downside. But for how it doesn't ever have to stop going up, but at some point the music does have to stop, and the downside is going to be quite detrimental to any longs that are still thinking they're smarter than the average bear. Yeah, jeez. CEI, what a boy. All right, let's go into Wacha's coming in for tomorrow or the rest of this week. ENG holding decently well. I like the daily on this one for, is it also a low floater? So many freaking stocks in CEI taking my attention. 17 million floater coming in with nice volumes on the day here. You can call this little like perk days, rest day, little perk days. Potentially maybe tomorrow is another rest day or something. Not the most insane volume. $50 million volume, 35 million or 35,000 trades. Price action is tough for me. This one, it's not the most clean or most aptitudinal, that's a word, for my type of style of trading, but I certainly enjoy trying to open myself up to more swingy ideas and seeing different patterns, recognizing them on the daily charts, seeing if there's different, obviously little 3-8ish area level here that I can see could pose some opportunities. And of course that $4 hold level area is always, all hold dollar levels are psychologically looming as well too. We'll see if it wants to continue produce any more basing opportunities for us to get long plays to the upside for that low floaterness. That is ENG. BRN is another one that I saw perking on my scanner. This is also an oil and gas sector in play too, so I don't know if people are playing sector plays alongside CEI, which of course is an oil and gas sector play, but this one has a lower float than CEI, 4.1 million. And I doubt it could be just other speculators trying to play the same thing on CEI. And it may be tough now that CEI had this hard of a panic today too, and whatever it does the rest of this week, that it has a hard sell-off, it may kind of disrupt this pattern if it wants to do anything. But coming up on some nice levels, $3.5 half-dollar level that it could produce if it wants to build that volume. Of course, it's got a lot of volume. The volume profile chart on the daily does some great identifying of like $3 to $3.60 range that it's got to get above and to really kind of be above the clouds and spread its wing and fly. So I think it's going to take a lot more volume compared to what it's been doing the past 2-3 days in order to get to that point. For how many bag holders are potentially still right around this range here, easy to see technically as well too, but the volume profile chart holds that well. That could be interesting if CEI still wants to go crazy, if it is still considered like a sector sympathy type of play to CEI. That is it. That is all on the day. $15 down day after those 3 trades. USWS, great trade for me. Just good educational experience on CEI. Was not really a trade whatsoever. Just kind of playing what was there and thinking I was a big fish in the big pond, but it was just really taking little tiny nibbles. And then CRVS, just kind of crazy, but great lesson too. Just keep myself accountable. Not chase things as they're there. Let the trade play out. If you think you missed it, then be willing to let it go. That's what I have to be willing to do going ahead in the future. Of I can't just be chasing green when I see it. I can't just be, even though I may have had this great plan going ahead beforehand, find a good entry point. I can't enter a trade already in a chasing mood. And that's why I mentioned going back to the introduction of, even though I may convince myself that, I'm getting this starter and feeler position because I'm developing a better relationship with a level 2 and I'm watching it more than if I wasn't even in the chart beforehand. But that's so BS. And it just sets me up even worse, I believe, really going forward for the rest of the day, that you have to enter the trade point from the trader that you want to be. I can't be fooling myself around and be so schizophrenic that I'm chasing it within the first few minutes of market open, but then I'm an actual trader after that first few minutes of market open, that I just turn a dial, that I'm a completely different trader within those time frames. I just can't play that way. And I've got to stick to one style of trading, one way that my brain works best, and one way of trading in which the substance-based trades are there, not just randomly chasing and going on a blind eye that this will be as hot as the 2020 market or whatever aspect of that can relate back to those chasing. But chasing for me is out. It's just no more. So that is all I had. What a great day. Another just, there's nothing better. This thing is just, it's red and green flashing lights, but it's so much more than that at the same time too. It's just so exciting every single day. That is all I had. 40-minute video coming at you. We will catch you guys tomorrow.